Alright guys, so this is part 2 to the video that I started off with. This is how to adapt a projector lens. So basically, I start off with this. This guy here is that little Palyard Bolex 35mm f1.3. It's made in Switzerland and it's originally meant for a 16mm sensor film. What I've done is I've taken this M42 adapter. It's M42 to M42, 10mm. With a bit of electrical tape, I've built up the side and I was able to fill it in. Quite perfectly actually. Two. For sure. And then same thing with this one. This one's just a little thinner. Same thing. Built up with electrical tape. The M42 ring slid right on. It's locked in place. Basically you have to measure it. You have to measure the distance from back element to your sensor. Get an approximate and play with it a little bit. And before you know it, you'll be shooting with f1.2, f1.3. Now, you may say, this poses a problem. How do I focus? Focusing comes with the helicoids. A focusing helicoid comes in handy. This one's M42, Sony Nex, because I shoot on Sony. This is an M42 to M42. It's a Pentax, Sashi Pentax. Bellows. Macro bellows. Now if you find the right ones, you can actually achieve infinity focus. That's getting the lens close enough to the sensor. In this case, it just slides right in. And it's in. This one particularly is a little bit more narrow passageway than this helicoid. So in turn, I cannot get to infinity focus on this bellows in particular. I can, however, get to the infinity focus on the helicoid. Moving on here, the same size opening. You can usually just electrical tape or epoxy, glue, whatever you want. You can just put a 10mm spacer. Some of them require a bigger spacer. This one is not actually set up right now, but it needs to stand off about yay much. So I need about a 24mm spacer off the back end of this one for it to actually work properly. Now for this big guy in the back, I had to downsize. I have to redo this. This is very crude. I put this tulip hood on. It makes a big difference for the contrast. But this is 120mm at f1.8. And the back element actually is about the size of the entire tube, short about 2mm. So I had to step this down to get it to M42 so I can focus it. Otherwise I would be going direct and have zero focusing, and I prefer to have focusing, so I went down to the M42. I'm thinking about getting an M52 ring for this so I can enlarge it and then get an M52 to Sony Nex or M42. Either way, it's going to go down to an M42 circle, which is unfortunate because I do believe this lens may have been good for medium format. I'm not entirely sure. I do, however, have a couple of medium format lenses. One is a 105mm and the other one is a 50mm. Basically, if you want to get this on here forever, take the tape off, or you can cut it perfectly. Make sure it's on there good and you just epoxy it. And it won't go nowhere. Some lenses have a really close minimum focusing distance. Others don't. other lenses also have a very close flange distance. For instance, this Palliard Bolex does have a pretty close flange distance. The back end of the lens protrudes. And that's one thing you have to be careful. If it goes past this part here, chances are it might get in the way of your shutter. And if your lens gets in the way of your shutter, there's a good chance that it'll break it. Yeah, so that's the first little rundown here. I mount and adapt all sorts of lenses that weren't meant to adapt. I'm working on an anamorphic lens. I kind of got gypped. The thing doesn't focus, which I need 2 different focus points for that thing to work. So we'll see. But yeah, I'll toss up a third video with some little video clips of these lenses, maybe soon. It's been a little bit of a rough time with work, so that's why I'm doing these videos. And figure I expand my creative abilities while I'm looking and waiting, and yeah. So everybody, this is projector lenses. They're quite interesting. You can find them almost anywhere. You just have to be careful what your sensor size is and what the sensor size capabilities of the image circles are. For instance, this one's only good for APS-C, and it's still vignettes here and there. For instance, when you're in too far of a macro with this lens, it tends to vignette. Same with this. This is an APS-C 24mm image circle. It's nice though. It's very, very shallow, very nice in the low light. That's where these 2 lenses really pop. Same with this. This tall lens, the 120 f1.8, it doesn't work too well in harsh sunlight. Washes out all the contrast. And vaguely has some weird flares. But yeah, this is a little rundown. The next video I'm going to be putting up will definitely be testing these guys. Any questions, just leave them in the comments. I know it's pretty simple and there's not much information, and you can pretty much do it with any lens, just finding them. Maybe I'll break down this one a little bit better. I had to take multiple step down rings and tape them all in place. I mean, of course you could epoxy everything in place. The only reason why I taped everything is because it was mainly temporary. I wanted to make sure that everything was set and solid and worked before I made sure it was in complete set in stone, you know what I mean? Yeah, adds a whole new artistic flair. This video was shot on a late 70s, must be late 70s or early 80s. It's a Super Takumar, or maybe the early, because it's not the Super multi-coated. It's a Super Takumar, 50mm f1.4. I have it stopped down to, let's see here, f4. I'm using the little Dead Rabbit microphone on top, once again with 2 fill lights. But peace and love, everybody, and I hope these guys can take something from this and maybe create your own little adaptions. Some of them make for excellent little pieces to shoot with. 127mm at f2.8. Very weird flares. Same with this one. This one's at, it's 4-inch. I assume this one to be a little bit closer to maybe 105mm at f3.5. I have other lenses as well, but they're I have homemade lenses. I've taken apart multiple lenses that didn't work, full of fungus, only a couple of salvageable pieces. And I threw them all into one, and so far I think I've nailed an f1 lens with large elements all the way throughout. And it looks like my battery died on my light, so I'm going to wrap it up, people. See you in the next video.